Now, I don't think anyone is a perfect person, but they do have their faults, and I'm here to call them out. And that includes Mathew Rosengart, because he's representing Britney Spears, and he needs to do a damn good job, especially because he's out here accepting awards on behalf of his firm. He was like Lawyer of the Year. He's getting a lot of clout from this, so I hope he's operating with integrity. After the termination hearing, Rosengart said that Jamie corrupted the conservatorship, so it's not his opinion that the conservatorship was corrupt upon inception, despite being started on a false claim of dementia and no capacity declaration ever being filed. It's interesting because he considers this conservatorship corrupt because Jamie Spears was a part of it. But in reality, the entire conservatorship was corrupt from the very beginning. It's not just Jamie's doing, which makes me question whether he believes this conservatorship was necessary at some point.
This conservatorship was corrupted by James P. Spears. James P. Spears, as we all know, from public records, took anywhere from $3 to $4 million from the estate.
And of course, being a part of the Free Britney movement has filled us with rage. We want to see justice, and that includes Jamie Spears being held accountable. Well, Rosengart was quoted saying that whether or not he is sued will be up to one person. We've already heard that Britney Spears says she wants to sue her family and her management should be in jail.
Whether or not he is sued or not will be up to one person. Whether or not he is sued or not will be up to one person.
So it's interesting that he knows that they deserve to be sued and charged for conservatorship abuse, but he's kind of dismissing it, claiming that it's really just up to Britney. Well, Britney has made her wishes very clear, so I think that he should be going, a little bit harder, or at least when he's talking about it up front with their choices. Maybe he doesn't want the other team to understand what they're planning, but at the same time, they already know. Another thing that's interesting is that Britney, she said that she doesn't like court, but she also claims that she just hasn't had much of a say in court. She hasn't been able to pick her own lawyer. She hasn't been able to make her own choices. She's really had no civil rights. So I didn't love that Mathew Rosengart said that the court only responds to him. She really has no say in it at all. And maybe it's because she doesn't like court. She doesn't want to be a part of it. She's like, screw it, Mathew, you handle it. But also, I do think that she wants to be involved in the sense that she wants to be able to say something or maybe keep tabs on what's going on if she wants to. But Mathew has kind of taken away that right. Now, remember when Britney's father, Jamie Spears, was removed as conservator, there was another man who was placed as her temporary conservator. This was Mathew's choice to put John Zabel as Britney's conservator. But this was weeks after John's lawyer, Justin Gold, went onto a podcast and said that Britney was lying in her testimony and defended Sam Ingham, Britney's former attorney. Now, throwback to Mr. Ingham, because he used to make $10,000 a week on Britney, and he did not do anything to serve as her lawyer. But let's go ahead and talk about what John Zabel's lawyer was quoted saying, because this is the man representing the guy that was Britney's conservator at some point. When talking about those rumors, his lawyer said, maybe they're coming from her, maybe they're not as scary as they sound, maybe it's just not reliable, saying that Britney maybe isn't telling the truth about her care. It's pure speculation, but it strikes me as odd, to say the least, that a judge would just ignore a serious allegation. I don't see any reason why Mr. Ingham would have done that. Suggesting that, Mr. Ingham brought this to the court, brought these concerns to the court, and the judge just said they weren't a worry. So essentially asking, why would the judge ignore this case if it was corrupt? But clearly the system is corrupt. He says that when Britney mentioned that she had never been told that she could terminate the conservatorship, he, Samuel Ingham, her lawyer, was outraged and filed his resignation based off of that. That makes sense to me. It makes sense that he would be outraged by something like that, because it seems very hard to believe that she isn't told that she could get out of this conservatorship, which I understand. It's shocking to think that Britney wasn't told that she could end this, but also the entire thing is shocking, and I totally believe he never told her that she could end the conservatorship because he was her bread and butter. He made so much money off of her, him being Samuel Ingham. Here's a clip of John Zabel's lawyer speaking on this podcast.
It is hard to get someone suspended as a conservator on an ex-parte basis. It requires some pretty serious facts. But if it's true that in 2019 such allegations were made, a petition would have been filed. But if something was filed in 2019 and it related to a conservatorship, it would absolutely have received a hearing by now. especially if it was a high profile case, and especially if there was urgency. I suspect that some of these things that we're hearing about her father are rumors. Maybe they're coming from her. Maybe they're not as scary as they sound. It's just not reliable is perhaps the way to look at it. I could be wrong. It's pure speculation, but it strikes me as odd, to say the least, that a judge would just ignore serious allegations. And I don't see any reason why Mr. Ingham wouldn't have done that, why he wouldn't have brought it up. If he saw some of these things and Britney was raising these issues and there was truth to it, I can't imagine he wouldn't have filed something that was consistent with those allegations and then screamed it from the mountaintops if there was a true urgency.
Now, before John Zabel was temporary conservator, Mathew Rosengart had another plan. He was going to appoint this man named Jason Rubin, who actually was accused of conservatorship abuse. So why would Mathew Rosengart choose someone who is so problematic that they have gotten into the same trouble as Jamie Spears? Pick 4 conservator of Britney's estate was once denied guardianship of his own mother. And after this news broke, Jason didn't last long. He wasn't going to be conservator with this type of history. Jason's mother at one point had a trust that was in dispute, and his own mother accuses him of abusing the system, claiming that his mother had paranoid schizophrenia and that he needed to have access to her estate. But his mother and Jason's brother, Mark, objected to the request, saying that Ida was competent enough to handle her own medical and financial affairs. So this man already tried manipulating the system. Why give him access to then Britney's estate? Clearly, Mathew Rosengart wasn't thinking the smartest in that moment. Now, here's another questionable moment, because there was a point where Jamie Spears could be sued for illegal surveillance and malpractice. Unfortunately, the statute of limitations on that passed, and New York Times reporter Liz Day called out Mathew Rosengart on his lack of action regarding the 180 hours of illegal surveillance evidence that she placed in his lab. That means that the people who were surveying Britney Spears just got away with it, and Liz Day tried to challenge Mathew Rosengart because she helped him get this evidence, but he did nothing with this. Why? Now let's talk about the care plan, because Britney was placed into a temporary care plan, which is sealed after the conservatorship ended. And Jody Montgomery ended up becoming Britney's conservator after all of those failed guys, after John, after Jason. They just put Jody there. Jody's been involved in Britney's conservatorship for a long time. She is a professional conservator who's also corrupt. We've talked about her before. But it seems like Mathew Rosengart has been in part the reason why this care plan is sealed, and we don't know how much control they really have over Britney at this current moment.
Out of care plan.
Yeah, do you want to?
Britney Spears is free. There's a mythology about a quote care plan unquote. There's a myth about a care plan.
Yeah, do you want to?
Britney Spears is free. There's a mythology about a quote care plan.
So Matthew's acting like this care plan is fake news, but in fact there was a care plan, which is part of the termination plan. This was filed with the court, and why Britney was able to leave her conservatorship under the court's ruling. But we really don't know how similar this care plan is to her previous conservatorship, which just, it sounds like the same thing, just a new name. Britney's conservator, Jody Montgomery's lawyer, was talking about this care plan 4 times in a court of law with Mathew Rosengart, both with Judge Penny and Britney Spears present. Here's that clip.
The details of her care plan and the progress she's been making and her conditions should be in the public forum. So I would just ask that when we file the care plan, we obviously will provide it to everyone who is a party on this case, but I think it should be sealed from the public. I don't think this is the best way to vet out a conservative's mental health issues and her care plan. It's just not the way to do it. I think we should do it under seal, and that would be my request for that care plan. Happy to file it and happy to have a hearing on it. I don't think the details of her care plan and the progress she's been making and her conditions should be in the public forum.
I don't like the idea of sealing anything. I mean, if it's going to protect Britney, then sure. But if it's going to protect the people who are running this care plan, then no. Cocky writes, the methodical care plan does exist. If I was a betting man, I would say that's why Jody Montgomery was chaperoning Britney's wedding. But the media doesn't want you to know that Jody was there. E! News wrote that Jody was there in an article, but then quickly erased her name. So why are they trying to hide that Jody Montgomery, Britney's conservator, is present consistent in all aspects of her life. Remember that Jodi Montgomery has been around for a long time. She's been around at least since 2009 during Britney's Candies era. Britney still being tied to Stanley Mosk Courthouse, and her trafficker Jodi should raise red flags for all. Britney did say that Jodi was abusive and compared her to her father. Britney said, "I'm talking to you today," to the judge, "because I feel, again, yes, even Jodi Montgomery is starting to take it too far with me. They have me going to therapy twice a week and a psychiatrist. She made me feel like my dad does. Very similar, her behavior and my dad, just a different dynamic." So Jodi is Jamie Spears part 2, and Mathew Rosengart is keeping her there. For what reason? There are also a lot of questions around Britney's communications and what that really means, because there are a lot of people involved in her social medias. Keep in mind that the right to Britney Spears' Instagram is pretty much sold to the Britney brand, so she really doesn't have control. And there's people like Cassie Petrie and others like Lou and Taylor who are listed as players in her social media game.
Those are Britney's communications. Those are Britney's communications.
There are currently 8 different people who have access to Britney's social media. So really, who is posting on her behalf if she's not? And we know that Cassie Petrie and a public relations firm has had their play with Britney's social media through a company called CrowdSurf. So it does make me question what is going on here. Just a reminder that Britney's communications went through the same channel during the conservatorship as they do now. Cassie Petrie of CrowdSurf. Considering Cassie's close allegiance to Lou and Taylor and the conservatorship, that's enough to be cautious at what Britney presents on social media. Here's a picture of Cassie, and she's the one who's helping Britney with her social media, which makes me question if that's why Britney puts so many hidden clues. Thank you for watching this clip from the Let's Get Into It podcast. To view the full episode, visit the link listed below.